like to call this meeting to order. Um, the Mayor and Council wishes to acknowledge the town of Fort Smith is located within the Treaty 8 territory. The Treaty 8 territory also encompasses the traditional homelands of Salt River, First Nations, Smith Landing First Nations, and the Indigenous Métis people of Fort Smith. These nations have maintained stewardship over their sacred lands throughout the generations. We honor their knowledge, teachings, traditions, and the land. We are mindful that colonization wasn't always kind to you. We respectfully recognize our generational history and commitment to strive for unity and the spirit of truth and reconciliation. Thanks.
I move that the agenda be adopted as presented.
I'll second that.
All in favor? All in favor, passed unanimously. Okay, our first guests are the RCMP.
Good evening, everyone. I'll be presenting the June monthly report. For the month of June, we had 172 calls for service, which is pretty much on par with June of 2022. Regarding our first initiative being road safety, we've stopped 55 vehicles in various check stops. Several tickets were issued. We were able to charge 4 people for the month of June for drinking and driving. 3 of them were in the span of 10 days. So those are pretty good results. In regards to community involvement and reconciliation, we've been involved in about a dozen different community functions, anywhere from helping with track day to Jesse assisting Adam, the bylaw officer, with the bike rodeo. I also do coach soccer. Sean was designated to present 2 plaques to students at the award ceremony at the school. We've also spent during Aboriginal Day serving food. I've been told we must have served in excess of 1,000 meals, which is quite surprising. Everyone had a good time there. It was amazing. We had our dog handler in town as well, late June, to help us with a couple investigations. We also had her visit the 2 daycares we had, so the kids had a good time playing with the dog and asking us questions about what a police dog does and doesn't do. In light of all the many calls we had about kids putting things on fire, we made a presentation at the school, at the elementary school, to most of the kids at the school on the dangers of arson and the risk associated to them. I'll say it now, but it'll be in the July monthly report. But we have 4 kids that will be charged for arson. They're quite young, but this time we'll be able to charge them. But that's going to be in the July monthly report. I thought I'd share that with you since it seems to be a monthly occurrence here with kids putting things on fire. We continue to do compliance checks on some of our chronic offenders, the ones that just go on a crime spree and just bully people, beat people, and who are on court-imposed conditions. We check their conditions. The moment they breach, we make sure that they're sent back to jail. Some of them get released, others don't. It's just how the system is. Unfortunately, it's kind of a revolving door, and we got to play with that. We have lodged 16 prisoners for the month of June, which is just a little over the number of prisoners we lodged for the month of June 2022. So nothing out of the ordinary. That's it for the monthly report for June. Subject to your questions or comments.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Campbell.
Well, thanks for the good work you guys been doing and everything, and also the good getting involved in the community. Looks good, and I think I met all the officers down and everything. And
Yeah.
all in a good meeting. I'm not.
Yeah, we do have a new supervisor in town. I believe this week is his second week. He's just currently busy, but I was hoping to have him with me tonight. It'll be for next month, but he's the one replacing Stephanie, and he has arrived from Fort Resolution. So he'll be with us for the next 2 to 3 years.
Councillor Ferguson.
Dan Doucette. Yes. And we, next month, towards the end of August, we should expect 2 more constables leaving to Common. One will be coming from Montreal, and the other one will be coming from Grand Prairie. And the third will be coming probably mid-September to the third week of September, and that one will be coming from, actually, that one will be coming from Grand Prairie. The second one will be coming from Tuktoyaktuk.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there any movement on your guys' resources in regards to mental health and the cases that you get called to for, mental wellness, mental checks, and the time, because those are the most time consuming and most risk for everybody. For you guys, and I know you spoke to it many times, that it would be an asset to have an additional resource in mental health to help assist with those cases or those. And is there any movement on that?
No.
No.
There isn't. Unfortunately. You said it, it takes a lot of our time, from the time that we apprehend the person to all the way to the time that they're either committed by a doctor to be sent to Yellowknife, or they deem that they're not a risk for themselves or a risk to others. We're talking hours at a time every single time we're dealing with someone that has mental health issues and who's been apprehended under the Mental Health Act. So,
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you. So from what can we do as a town council to help assist you guys? Is there like someone we need to lobby? Is there someone we should be asking? Is it the government, the GNWT, Health and Social Services? Like, who are we supposed to ask to help you guys so you can do your job?
I believe it would help if you guys advocate on our behalf to the GNWT. It has to come from Health and Social Services. I'll give you an example of what we're dealing with, and it's highly frustrating. Obviously, the person needs help, but if that person that needs help doesn't reach out on their own, the mental health counselor will not reach out and offer their assistance unless that person walks into their office. Someone that's in a mental health crisis does not necessarily see that they're in need of assistance. So we're in that kind of a gray zone where, what do? We don't have enough to apprehend the person under the Mental Health Act. It is very obvious. You don't need to be a doctor or a nurse to determine that they need help, but our hands are tied. What can you do? Right? So those people, I find, kind of fall between the cracks of the system. Again, in other jurisdictions, and this is just from reading the news, there's psych nurses patrolling with cops. We don't have the call volume or the stats to justify that. I'll be the first one to admit it. But there should be some sort of other solutions that, our partners should be able to reach out to these people, just to touch base and say, hey, how you doing? I heard you haven't been doing well lately. So little things like that, I believe, will make a difference. Yeah.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't know if this is for you, but is there adult social services here that you can liaison with to go on these cases with you? Like an adult, hey, I have an adult person who needs help, right? There's no one here that you guys
No.
liaison with?
Even when we're dealing with teenagers that are above the age of 16, so between 16 and 18, whenever we're dealing with social services and a child of that age, teenager of that age, we're being told, sorry, we can't, there isn't a whole lot we can do, or there's nothing we can do. That's the response we get. But again, there is a need there. Someone needs help.
Any other questions? Okay, I see none. Just for your information, the leadership has advocated on the RCMP's behalf, and that's dealing with the Missing Persons Act.
Right.
And that has gone up to Yellowknife for letter, and I do have a copy in my office should you need it in your department.
Excellent.
So I was thinking of giving you a copy so that it's there. So
Absolutely.
that way we're all in the same book together.
And this is in support of the legislation that it's been discussed in the news and whatnot.
Yes, it is.
Amazing.
So, yeah, thanks.
Amazing. Thank you.
So thanks for your report tonight, and it was great.
Thank
Thanks.
you very much. Have a nice evening.
Okay, next we have Minister Green. If you'd like to take the front seat there, thanks. Welcome to Fort Smith, and it's good that you always come here. You're becoming a good face among us. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I always enjoy coming here. With me tonight, Sujata Ganguly, who is the Chief Operating Officer of the Fort Smith Health Center, and my special advisor, Elizabeth King, and no stranger to you, but in the role of Chair of the Northwest Territories Health and Social Services Authority, Jerry Cheesy, who is here to listen.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniels, and welcome. It's a real pleasure to have you join us tonight. I think it's been a lot of concerns from the community. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. I'm on call for the territorial duty fire phone, so I'm going to have to step away. If I could pass it off to someone else, please. Thank you.
Councillor Campbell. Okay. Yeah, there's all kinds of concerns that coming out here in our health department, like your medevacs, your escorts, and the time it takes that people have phoned in for appointments and they're not told till the last minute, and that's becoming a problem. And there's other things I'm sure the council will bring up.
Do you want me to talk about the issues you just raised?
Do we want to go one by one here?
Yeah, maybe you could just talk about those first, maybe.
Sure. So the Northwest Territories Health and Social Services Authority has a contract with AMS and Air Tindy to provide medevac services. There are 2 planes available with appropriate staff at any given time of the day or night, or week of the month. And they use a triage system to pick patients up. So there can be simultaneous needs for the medevac, and they will go to the one that is most urgent first. And so sometimes people get bumped further down because there is a more pressing case that's called in. So we have noticed that there has been an increase in the number of calls We feel that we have enough staff to take care of the number of calls we have now. But having said that, this is a contracted service, and the contract expires in March of 2025. So there will be a need to recontract the medevac services. With respect to escorts, this is the bane of my existence, not to put too fine a point on it. There is a specific criteria for having non-medical escorts with patients that have to do with a woman who is going out to give birth, somebody who doesn't speak the language, somebody who's going for a serious diagnosis. Those are all reasons to have non-medical escorts. The thing that I get asked most often is whether the non-medical escort can go on the medevac plane, and the answer to that is no. We don't transport escorts on the medevac plane for a couple of reasons. One is it's like a emergency room in the sky, so the nurse in the back is fully occupied caring for the patient in the back, and if there is a problem with the patient, the nurse is not going to be able to deal with both the patient and the escort. What we try to do in that case is send the escort on the next available commercial flight to the place that the person has been medevaced. We, in 2019, introduced an exceptions policy to try and make the service more widely available. But it's still, I know, not sufficient. I am still asked often for non-medical escorts in different situations. And we have looked at how we can accommodate this. And to be perfectly honest with you, it is in part a function of money. We spend $48 million a year on medical travel, and that's through NIHB as well as for the population as a whole. So if we were going to add money to that, it would have to come from somewhere, and our health system is already massively in debt. So it's a difficult situation to try to resolve, but it isn't one we've given up on, but it's not easy.
Councillor Ferguson.
Just a follow up to that, I think too with the escorts, the question I think it was trying to get across is sometimes there isn't a, sometimes it's just whoever gets to go. So, for example, someone will get a non-medical or a non-medical escort to accompany an elder, and who has mobility issues and perhaps need the assistance. But then the next person who applies for the exact same thing will get denied. So there's not like continuity over how people are being yes, no, who's stamping that. It feels as though it's not, I don't know, applied the same as for everyone.
Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor. There is standard criteria, but it may not be applied the same everywhere because different people are applying that criteria. And sometimes people look equivalent on the face of it, but they aren't, and one needs an escort and the other one doesn't. So it's hard to generalize about why doesn't this work across the board? Because in the end, there are a lot of variations to what people need. A key part of this is having the medical practitioner write a letter saying that the person needs an escort. That is a key starting point. If the person doesn't have that letter, it's very hard to get organized with a non-medical escort.
Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, going back to when you said about the practitioner giving a letter or something. A lot of times you ask somebody, they say, you need any escorts? They'll say no. And a lot of times I talk to them and I said, I just said, no, I don't need an escort. But they do need an escort. I help people get off the plane in Yellowknife, driven them to the places they have to go because they had no idea. And they're 70 years old, but they just told the doctor, the medical practitioner, no. And the practitioner does not know these people because they're just in town. They got to follow up and consult with more family or do something. I know it takes more time, but they got to do something because we're sending these people south or north without any support.
Yeah, this is a difficult area because we can't make people have non-medical escorts, and often they do say they don't want them, and then they get to Yellowknife and they regret having said that. We now have patient navigators in all the acute care centers, so that if the patient is picked up at the airport by the boarding home and taken to the hospital, they can connect with the patient navigator who can do a lot of those supportive and advocating pieces of work. But really, I recognize the problem here is pride, that people don't want to admit that they want help, or they don't want to ask for help. They feel that they are independent. But if people don't ask for the help, it's hard for us to tell them that they need the help. Thank you.
Councillor Beaulieu.
Yeah, just a little bit of questions, I guess, to his question is what we have in the north is a language barrier. A lot of people don't speak English. It's a second language to them. And they do answer appropriately and say no if they don't know what you're saying to them. I've had people go that had appointments and stuff to the clinic and not understand what the doctor was telling to them. They would agree to what the doctor was saying, not fully understanding what their medical condition was. And it's the same thing with travel. If you told them that they don't need an escort, well, they're going to agree with you because they don't fully understand what you're saying to them in the English language. This is where we need translators that know what the person is in need of. And for medical travel, medevacs, I don't see why you cannot have a family member go with the patient. I understand that there's a doctor or a nurse on the plane. If something happened to that person between here and the destination they're going to down south, there is no family member there. And that's a sad thing to see, a person get deceased in the flight or something with no family member. And like I said, the language barrier up here is very strong, and we need translators or somebody that can fully explain to these people what their medical condition is before they are sent somewhere. I was a witness to an elderly lady from up north in Edmonton. She spent half a day at the airport, and if I didn't approach her, she probably would have stayed there all day. She didn't fully understand who she was supposed to be in contact with. She didn't know she had to phone anybody. She had spent half a day there wondering who to talk to. And if I didn't approach her, she would have still been there looking around for help.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. That's something to look into. I was talking to one of the chiefs today down in Fort Fitzgerald, and his English is excellent, but he said he has recently been involved with the health system, and he said that the medical terminology was a bit beyond him. And to be honest, I think it'd be a bit beyond anyone whose first language is English. Some of it is very technical, and the doctors aren't necessarily good at communicating in a plain language way. So I think it's important to let the practitioner know what the language needs are so that they can be accommodated. We want people to understand what's happening to them. So I think that making the practitioner aware that you need someone to accompany this patient who speaks another language might help in that situation.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniels. And I wanted to again apologize for the interruption earlier. So I have a few questions. I'll start off with, could you provide us with an update on the implementation of the integrated care team for Fort Smith?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I'm going to refer it to Sujata because she is the person who is in charge of the operation here, and that's an operational question.
Thank you, Minister. So, as you may be aware, integrated care teams are being rolled out in different parts of the territory. We are not the only one. So Yellowknife has had theirs for, I believe, a little bit longer than we've had ours. And other regions are also looking at this model. Unfortunately, our integrated care team rollout happened just as COVID was really starting to gear up in Fort Smith. And it did kind of put set us back quite a bit from where we had hoped to be at this point. So, I mean, what I can tell you is that at this point we have named our teams. They're no longer Team A and B. I believe one name is Team Muskwa, and I cannot remember the name of the other one. So we had a little bit of a contest where the public was asked to submit names, and these were the two names that won out. This was actually done at our open house for those of you who were there and had a chance to put your choice in as name. Other than that, if people don't know what team they're on, they're either told when they have an appointment booked, or if they don't have an appointment booked, they can also call us and find out which team they're on. You are able to switch teams if, for example, you want to be on the same team as a family member, or don't want to be on the same team as your family member, as the case may be. But you can also call the clinic and find out that way what team you're on. At this point, we have done a lot of work behind the scenes, so things that you wouldn't necessarily be aware of. So the staff are starting to operate as two teams, which means that certain staff are assigned to one team, certain staff are assigned to another team, and as they that means that rather than having 1,000 people that they're responsible for overall, each team has a smaller number and can hopefully provide some deeper knowledge of the situations that face those individuals. They've given me a few examples of some other things that they've done behind the scenes. For example, each team has time every morning where they do what's called chart combing or a chart review to identify things for appointments that are coming up. For example, things like immunizations, preventative screening, and so forth. And you may, if you've had a recent appointment, have noticed that you've been asked, you're told that you were due for a certain immunization or screening, and that was probably identified before you arrived on the scene during that morning chart review. One of the other things that we've also done is recently every woman over the age of 50 who hasn't had a mammogram or hasn't had one in a while is now on our call list and has been called. Many of people have now been called to be offered appointments for mammograms. So we've called, as of 2 weeks ago, we've called over 100 people, and I know we've been calling more. And I actually had a call because I haven't had a mammogram in a while. I was a bit surprised. So previously, the way things would have worked is the onus would have been on the patient to either identify that they haven't had a mammogram, or hopefully the physician has checked the back in your charts and noticed that that's been the case. So in this sense, we're being more upfront around checking your chart and seeing who has had a mammogram and who hasn't. Our general communication to the public has been held up a little bit with the requirement to translate all of our materials into French. And as you know, Fort Smith is one of the 4 communities, I believe, or 3 communities in the Northwest Territories where everything has to be translated into French. And unfortunately, everything that we've designed so far has not been. So as soon as that's done, we're waiting for that back. You should be seeing these things put in your mailboxes that explain a little bit more about how the integrated care teams work. I guess the most important thing, and I think that I've been waiting for the longest for, is that our community health nurses are now fully trained and are able to work as scope. That means that they are actually able to run, something that we call a sick clinic, for example. They can see people for minor ailments like sore throats, ear infections, and are actually able to prescribe from a very, very narrow list of medications for those things. So if you do not need to see a doctor, if it is something that a CHIN can prescribe something for you, then it frees up the physician's time and makes us, helps us to better use those resources. Any more questions in that regard?
Deputy Mayor. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you. Okay. This is the first I've heard of teams. I didn't hear anything about it before this. I'm confused. Why do I want to be on a team? I don't understand the process. Is it because lots of people are going to look at my information now?
Well, you know, when you make an appointment, there are a number of people who look at your information at this point at any rate. The idea about integrated care teams is that teams operate to provide, to have the right level of service for your need. So if you do not need to see a doctor, you can be served by a CHIN, for example. If you need an immunization, you can see a nurse to have that immunization. It does not have to be done by a doctor. So the way the team works is that they work to provide you with the most efficient service that we can. Really there aren't any more people seeing your information than previously. Potentially fewer people, actually, because we've now got these two sets.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks. So how is this going to make it better for, I just know, just set my own experience, my family's experience, other people's experience. How is this going to make it better for the missing appointments, calling us on Friday for the appointment we have on Monday, not having a plan? Like, how is this team going to make the process better?
Oh, that's why we're doing it. So hopefully the process will be much better than it was previously. You will have one person to call if you have any questions about your care. So that would be the program assistant for that team. If it's a medical question, of course, it would be passed over to someone who can answer those types of questions. But anything appointment related would be to the program assistant on that team.
Councillor Ferguson.
When was this implemented? When have you been, when has these integrated teams been working, and how long have they been working for?
So it was first introduced before I came, so that must have been back in 2020. And we went live in February of 2021.
Sure, I know. I see it. I don't know. Maybe it's the way you're selling it. It sounds kind of dorky. Not dorky.
Yeah.
It sounds hooky. And I'm like, I don't want to be on your team. Like, I want this. If it's been running for 3 years, it's not a good team, right? Like, if we're still experiencing all these problems and it's been running since 2021, how is this going to make it any better?
Well, I mean, that's what they were introduced and there was a launch, but we were not truly operating as teams. So the information I've just given you assumes that you knew something about the integrated care teams to begin with, because the question was posed in a way that would make me think that you have heard about them. So the flyer that you're going to be receiving in your mailbox really describes the roles of each member of that team. So each team has a CHIN, has a program assistant, has an LPN, and then is supported by a second CHIN that is a floater CHIN. And ideally would have a nurse practitioner attached, but we've been unable to get nurse practitioners. And the locum physicians that we work with would be assigned on a daily basis to one or the other team. So they would work with those people in that team. It's based on the Newcomb model from Alaska with, some changes because of our local context.
So we've had teams in Yellowknife in primary care for the last couple of years. And what the team is able to do is specialize in their set of patients and what their needs are for follow-ups, for, as Sujata was saying, to obtain information, to give information, and so on. So instead of you calling the clinic and you get whoever, and they may or may not have heard from you before, if you're on the A team, let's say it's called A, then that program assistant is working with you, that LPN is working with you, that community health nurse is working with you. So the idea is to do more relationship building so that this group of people know you and you know them, And that will improve the continuity of care that you're receiving, which can be problematic without this team approach. It's fragmented. So you talk to one person, you tell them your whole life story, and you go in 2 weeks later and you see somebody new and you tell them your whole life story. So the idea is to try and build these relationships and improve the continuity of care.
Councillor Tucky.
Thank you, Mayor Daniels. Well, I have to agree with my fellow Councillor Ferguson here that this does seem kind of confusing. You're using a lot of terminology which we're not aware of, and you're going to make the public aware through a flyer through the mailbox. And I'm just pondering how an Indigenous elder between 70, 80, 85, whose second language is English, is going to understand just what the hell you guys are talking about. I guess my first question is, have we deleted public health nurse? We no longer have a public health nurse? Because that's who used to give all the immunizations. I've been here for 50 years. I've gotten a lot of shots, updated a lot of shots. Never been given one by a doctor except for a specialized cortisone shot once, which he had to do. I've never received a needle in the last 50 years in Portsmouth Health Center from a doctor. So my question is, what happened to public health? Are you just shifting responsibility from one area to another, to creating these teams, which is very confusing? And I understand that for obvious reasons that there is a directive. Portsmouth is one of those communities that have to put everything in French. But I really think it would be beneficial to the health system that they start looking at putting as much effort into the Indigenous languages as they do in French. I mean, the Indigenous people have been here a lot longer than French people. Nothing against French people, but we have to look at the people that we're serving the most here in the north. That's our Indigenous people. And that's a concern to me.
Well, I can't comment on the French language legislation. That's far, far, far above my pay grade. But what I can say is that it is supposed to make things easier for someone who really otherwise would not know who to call. The idea is that there is one person that you call, and that is the program assistant on your team. And that person can connect you with whoever else needs to be involved in your care. So the model, the NUCA model, is from Alaska, and it's actually something that was created by the South Central Foundation, which is an organization that exclusively serves Indigenous people in Alaska. And that is where the model came from and where our model is based on. There are some essential differences between the Alaska model and ours, and not the least of which is the number of resources that we have here versus what Anchorage, for example, has. But nonetheless, that idea that team-based care makes it actually easier for people is what we're trying to get to.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Daniels. A couple of follow-up questions. So does the team approach incorporate medical travel and how that linkage is created between the patients and the two different teams? Because we hear a lot from this community, complaints regarding medical travel, issues with bookings, issues with transportation, issues with hotels, timelines that are way too short. And this team approach has there been a consideration given as to how that linkage, if you've reduced the number of people that each team is serving, have you created that opportunity for that team to liaison with the travel side of healthcare to ensure that our citizens are getting the information in a timely manner, that it's accurate, and that they're not put into situations where medical travel becomes a burden, because I've heard that way too often.
But we haven't yet, but that sounds like something that we can make note of. And if there's some way to incorporate making that linkage easier for individuals, we'll definitely see what we can do.
Councillor Tucky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, you forgot to answer one question. Do we still have a public health nurse or no?
We have a territorial public health nurse, and we did have someone working with her who is a local employee, but unfortunately she's leaving with one of our RCMP officers. So my question to the young man who was giving his presentation is if any of the incoming officers have spouses who are healthcare workers, nurses in particular.
Councillor Tucky.
So could you give me a definition what a territorial worker is? Is that just one worker that looks after the whole territory, or you have one in each community, or what is it?
No, we're actually very lucky to have someone here who is a territorial public health specialist. And she was actually invaluable around the time of COVID. She did a lot of work in the background. And for example, one of the things that she's working very much on right now is for the approaches to the syphilis outbreak. So she would be looking at things that are of concern territory-wide, but also giving us, resources here in Fort Smith that if she hadn't been a resident here, would have been harder for us to access.
Thank you, Mayor Daniels. Just have a few more questions. So this team's approach, is it a way to reduce the number of resources required? So you described a lot of different activities or services that were provided by people other than doctors. So will this lead to a reduction in the number of doctors required in the community, or is that going to remain the status quo? And is the intent at the end of the day to turn the Fort Smith Health Center into a nursing station?
The threshold for a health center is a population between 2,000 and 8,000 people. In the last 20 years, Fort Smith has grown by about 300 people to about 2,600 people. So there's no question that the health center is going to be anything except a health center. The teams do not reduce resources. They reorganize resources. So the doctors you're getting now are the doctors you're getting.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Minister Green. That was the answer I was hoping for, so I appreciate that. One last question. So the staffing allocation or assignment for the Fort Smith Health and Social Services, including all of the part-time positions, how many of these positions are currently vacant, not filled by indeterminate employees? And could you please break that down between healthcare and social services?
I'll ask Sujata to answer that.
Yeah, I had to comb my org charts to get that information for you. And while I was doing that, I realized that it changes week to week. And we're actually losing 2 really good nurses when those RCMP officers move elsewhere. And hopefully we'll be able to backfill them somehow. But as of last week, when I made my list here, in allied health, which includes rehab, and the clinical laboratory point of care, we've had 6 out of 10 positions filled, plus 1 position is currently double filled. That's probably one of our least filled. And as you know, we have no occupational therapist or speech language pathologist in the community at the moment. And neither do we have a physiotherapy assistant, but I'm hoping that will change very soon. In acute care, we have 10 out of 13 positions filled. So those are all RN positions that we are filling with locums. In home care, we have 5 out of 6 positions filled. Long-term care, we have 24 out of 25 positions filled. In operations, we have 14 out of 15 positions filled. In primary care, at least last week, we had 16 out of 17 positions filled. And this one, because this is not a program that I'm directly responsible for, Child, Family, and Community Wellness, I looked at the org chart for that. There are 10 out of 11 positions filled.
I'm just going to add to what Sujata said. This is an enviable level of staffing compared to other regions of the Northwest Territories. The nursing vacancy rate is around 25%. The doctor vacancy rate is around 50%. And allied health, the positions that Sujata just described, the physiotherapists, speech language pathologists, and so on, they are in tremendous short supply all across the territory. So the staffing levels here are very robust in comparison.
Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you for that. It's nice to see that a lot of the divisions are almost fully staffed, and I appreciate that. For the vacancies, are those jobs continually advertised? Always on the GNWT website? And are the RN positions that are currently, you said, filled by locums, are those also advertised trying to fill those full-time permanent?
Always, our positions are always posted, the ones that are indeterminate and not filled with permanent staff.
Thank you.
Councillor Campbell.
The specialist position, like the rheumatologists, what is happening with them? Are we going to get them back in line for the people in the north?
There's been some work being done on the rheumatology. As you know, the rheumatologists stopped coming to the Northwest Territories last December. We announced that the rheumatology program would now be based in Alberta and people would have to go to Alberta. So what's been happening is that urgent cases for rheumatoid arthritis have been sent to Alberta for immediate service. And then the non-urgent cases have started to fall behind. So they are now a priority to bring them back up to speed. And from what I understand, there's now a new agreement between Alberta and the NWT on rheumatoid arthritis specialization, which will make the catch-up work faster than it has been. It's been pretty slow, is my understanding, for the last 6 months.
Councillor Tuckey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you tell me at the healthcare center, are there any plans to put the quiet room back into place? Thought there were some plans for that. So if there was some kind of an emergency situation in the RCMP and someone deemed it necessary that a person needed to be secured for their own personal safety or safety of others, that room was available, which was at one time taken out.
And it wasn't taken out exactly. It was deemed no longer to be fit for purpose. So then during COVID, it was converted to I believe, a COVID exam room, so to speak. And yes, the award has now been, the RFP has been awarded, has been responded to and awarded to a contractor. And that work is slated to start at the end of August. It'll take a few months and it'll be a bit of a nightmare for staff and probably other people also, but hopefully well worth it in the end.
And just to follow up, it sounds like the staffing is a lot better than maybe some of us on council knew. I guess my concern is, as you've heard the RCMP presentation tonight, and I have a number of years experience with social services too, and dealt with many volatile situations. It's a very time-consuming process. And just wondering, how can we assist the RCMP so they aren't spending so much time dealing with the situations that you're dealing with that they really shouldn't be dealing with, because we do have mental health specialists here. Isn't that part of their job to do that? And the other thing I've heard is that mental health specialists are not on call on weekends. Is that true? And why is that?
Well, they are on call, but only, I believe, between 8 and 4. And that is because we don't have enough positions to have, around the clock coverage and still have people available during the weekdays, during the day for scheduled appointments. It isn't enough. So you can imagine to have on-call people around the clock, it's something like 2.4 FTE for 24-hour 7 around the call coverage. And if any of those people gets a call, then that puts them not available for any other services well into the next day. So our level of staffing, it doesn't lend itself to that. And when I inquired about, whether or not there was any possibility of getting that level of staffing, I was told that there's actually no region in the Northwest Territories that has 24/7 on-call mental health supports. And the minister may have something to add to that.
Sujata is right. We don't offer it anywhere. We don't have enough staff. We can't recruit enough staff. We don't have the money for the amount of staff that Sujata has just described. So we're counting on the helpline, the NWT helpline, to assist people in the non-office hours, if you will, to answer whatever questions they have. It's not our job to do the RCMP job. We can't force people into counseling or mental health services against their will. So when the RCMP show up and somebody is with suicidal ideation, they go to the hospital, they're assessed. There are standard assessment tools for juveniles and for adults. And if they don't present a harm to themselves or others, they're released. If they do present a harm to themselves or others, then at this point, because the safe room is not operating, they would go to Edmonton to Yellowknife to the psychiatric ward, and they would be assessed there. The Mental Health Act does not provide for indefinite stays by people who are presenting with mental health issues that are not verified by clinicians. So I often get asked, why can't you keep him in the hospital longer of somebody who is having some kind of a mental break? And the fact is, we are very, very tightly prescribed about what we can do with mental health patients by legislation. So if they're in the hospital for 24 hours, the hospital has to justify keeping them with the Mental Health Act Review Board. So it's a very complicated dynamic of trying to meet mental health needs in all the communities of the NWT 24/7. We have really tried to diversify the number of resources we have in this area, but are we catching everyone at their moment of peak need? Unfortunately, we probably aren't.
Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. GNWT and Addiction and Treatment Center, are we going to get one back up here? And then second question is follow-up houses or follow-up after somebody does go to an addiction and treatment center. We need some follow-up or transition house or something.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So with respect to transitional programming for people who've completed treatment, sometimes we pay for them to stay at the residential addiction facility that they have been at for their 30 days of treatment. We'll pay for them to stay longer, to go into sort of a secondary phase. 2 years ago, we advertised for service providers to provide transitional housing for people returning from treatment. We got 4 responses, and I'm going to try and remember everywhere they're from. Hay River, Fort Good Hope, Yellowknife, and Inuvik, I think it is. So those programs are being developed now as places that people can go to continue their recovery. We understand that if we don't provide that kind of transitional service, then people are likely to go right back into whatever it was they left 30 days previously. So that's the situation there. Instead of having in-territory treatment, we have 6 contracts with out-of-service addictions facilities. There is some interest in having regional addiction treatment facilities. I've had a number of meetings with the Indigenous governments around this issue. So it runs the gamut from tents in the Dachau to the Gwich'in Healing Camp, which is a bricks and mortar situation. So what we are trying to do is to assist Indigenous governments in providing whatever kind of healing addictions recovery and healing response they want, whether they want it to be on the land, they want it to be in town, they want it to be 30 days, 60 days, co-ed, gender separate, whatever it is that they want to do. So what we've learned from the history of addiction treatment centers here is that there's too much diversity in the Northwest Territories to have just one center. If we have it in Hay River, the Inuvialuit don't want to go. If we have it in Inuvik, maybe people here won't want to go. Like there's so much diversity that that the last treatment center we had was never more than 1/3 full, and so we're not anxious to run into that again. And it's difficult to staff, but also I want to tell you that in Nunavut they've just awarded a contract for an addictions treatment center there, $65 million. So that represents about 1/4 of our infrastructure budget for all of our infrastructure budget. So it's going to be a tough sell to put one, let alone multiple centers in the NWT.
Do we have any more questions? Councilor Ferguson.
Thank you. I've just heard back from a lot of folks on their experiences. Maybe it'll get better with the team's approach that you have. But folks who have sat here, in Fort Smith specifically, been misdiagnosed and had to then advocate for themselves or leave on their own to go seek medical treatment down south. I know that myself and some other people have had to do that similar thing, only because I had the means, right? So that would be really hard if someone doesn't have means or ability to escape for themselves and go somewhere to seek medical treatment that they're not receiving here. How are you guys addressing that kind of issue here?
We don't have any direct addressing of misdiagnosis. That is something that the patient decides. Like, you're not talking about a professional problem, are you? No, you're talking about you don't agree with what the doctor or nurses told you is wrong with you.
No, they actually had a broken leg and were sitting here and not being treated for a broken leg. And then they had to drive themselves or fly to Edmonton to then be treated for that broken leg.
Yeah, so out of territory services have to go through the NWT referral pathway. People can't choose what services they want in the south, and then the GNWT will pay for it. There needs to be a health professional in the NWT who refers the patient to a service out of territory. So that's the way it works. You can assign yourself to go to the U of A or the hospital of your choice, but you would have to pay for it. Is that what you're asking?
I don't
No,
think so.
still
Not at
not
all.
there.
Not at
Okay,
all. So
try
what I'm
again.
saying is there's been several cases where we've been sitting in the hospital here specifically, and someone has congestive heart failure, someone has a broken leg, someone has kidney stones. They're like, oh, take pain medication. Oh, your breathing's heavy here. Go home with a puffer. Oh, your leg's sore. Oh, you just twisted it real bad. They then had to go, okay, go down south and, oh, geez, you have congestive heart failure. Oh, geez, you have a broken leg. Oh, damn, you had kidney stones, and be treated because it wasn't being responded to here.
you know, I guess I don't know the particulars here, but I would wonder if you weren't satisfied, why wouldn't you go back again? And
Again, this is like they're coming and saying these things to us. So like this is the person who had happened to reporting, like saying, this is what happened. This is what my experience was. I finally just had enough and went down south myself.
so what we've introduced recently, which I want to recommend to you, is the Office of Client Experience. It's a place that people can call or email and complain. And the people who are answering the phone can take what we call consent to view your medical record right on the phone. They can take the consent on the phone with a view to resolving your case. So this is a new, and it's been highly effective service. So hi, I don't like the diagnosis I got. I would like to have a second opinion. I think the doctor is inadequate, whatever the situation is, and they will work on resolving the issue. So I just want to go back to the point that I made before. You can't self-refer to Alberta and have the GNWT pay. Yeah, you have to have, like, so the doctor who can't manage your kidney stone right at that moment, wherever they are in Fort Smith and Yellowknife, wherever, they need to refer you on, and then medical travel is paid, and you know it's not going to cost you. Yeah.
Councillor Tucky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to follow up with a concern. A patient went to an emergency here in Fort Smith in a great deal of discomfort. She was told by the receptionist that she was probably suffering from constipation and should go home and see what happens. The patient did not leave the premises. Later on, the grandmother of the said patient approached the receptionist twice afterwards, demanding her granddaughter be seen by a doctor as she was in a great deal of discomfort. As it turns out, the patient was medevac to Yellowknife nearly 12 hours later at approximately 11:40 p.m. and underwent surgery the very next morning to have her appendix removed. Can someone tell me why the receptionist would have the authority to say, go home and give it some time? It happened in Fort Smith.
Yeah, the receptionist does not have the authority to tell anyone to go home. The standard process is for a nurse to triage, to examine, and then call a physician. If this was during the day, and it sounds like it was because the receptionist was there, there would have been a physician in the health center.
Actually, I can tell you
So I,
for a fact there was a doctor walking back and forth. There were nurses back and forth.
and none of them knew that this person was sitting there waiting?
Well, I'm not really sure exactly because I was in another room with my great granddaughter at the time, and I happened to be the grandfather of the young lady I'm talking about, who was sent to Yellowknife. My wife had to be very insistent with the receptionist and demanding that she get to see a nurse. And other people had come in and were put into rooms before the patient who was eventually medevac, was seen.
Yeah, so everyone is to be triaged by a nurse. Reception does not do triage. So I don't know what happened in that situation, but I mean, you have every right to put in an official complaint, and you should have. It would have been investigated.
And wouldn't something like this have been brought to your attention?
Yes.
Because I believe a complaint was actually lodged by the parent.
I've not heard of this situation.
And it's kind of concerning because I've had a few other people who are saying that they've been treated the same way by this receptionist. And I think it's something that needs to be addressed or looked into.
So is this the receptionist in the ER?
Yes.
Yeah, I would love to hear more specifics on this case because I don't know anything about it.
Councillor Campbell.
But just go back to your thing when you say follow up and put a complaint in. Most people, myself, most people just get pissed off and say the hell with it, not put anything, just do the suffering out. Because nobody complained very often. And so we got to find some better way that they could put it in writing. I don't know, but then there got to be some follow up or something. Because there's something going wrong and we're not finding out about what's all happening and everything. There's got to be, not just put a complaint in, because you put a complaint in, it goes, throw it on the floor there and just hope somebody picks it up and follows through with it. We don't know if it's been read or anything. I don't know what we could do, but we got to do something. We got to figure out something a lot better to do. Because, like I say, I won't go complaining. I'll just say the heck with it and move forward.
Perhaps you missed the council meeting where we had Glenda Simon present. So she is our senior Indigenous patient advocate. And she is, you know, the approach that we take is every door leads to service. And Glenda's role is to be available for people who perhaps, you know, don't like to write things down, feel very uncomfortable in approaching somebody like me, for example. She's not my employee. She is managed regional, territorially, so she doesn't answer to me. And she is, for some of the circumstances I think that you're probably describing, the right per individual to address complaints. She's very approachable. She has an open door policy. Someone just need walk up to her door and knock and you know, she responds. And her job is also to follow up. So if you have come to her with a concern, she will then follow up with you as to what's happened with that concern. And I know she does that because she produces for me a list of all the concerns that have come and how she's addressed them. And then, you know, what the response back from the individual who's made that complaint has been. And she also guides me on, you know, changes that need to be made that maybe I'm not aware of because I don't see things from that lens. But she listens to people, she understands, and she tells me this needs to be changed, that needs to be changed. It's, you know, it's still a new relationship. She's only been around for a few months, but I'm thinking the types of concerns you're raising may be best met by her.
Councillor Campbell.
That's great. I knew about Glinda, but other people don't. Why don't we put some big advertisement up front, show her where her office is, and something saying Glinda, I can't say. Yeah, but just something that we can show people this what she does and this what you do. So you're not going home and start writing something up and then forget about it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think she's done a number of things, but it sounds like it's probably never enough. So we'll do more.
Councillor Tuckey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Another thing I'd just like to bring up too, I think it's sort of been mentioned, is medical travel. I've had many complaints from people who complain that by the time they're told that they have to leave on Monday, it's impossible. Medical travel cannot get things ready over the weekend. And they've missed appointments. I've had one person told me that they paid for their expense to go to Yellowknife and stay in the hotel and come back and not bother even trying to put a claim in. And my concern is about this particular situation where they give you such short notices. It's happened to me quite a few times. It's gotten to the point where we find out about our medical appointments. First thing we do is we phone hotels, we book our hotels, because a lot of times when medical travel does it, well, there's no hotels available in Yellowknife. These are things that a lot of people can't do because they don't have I guess basically the skill set to do it. I mean, seniors and stuff are really in a predicament. I mean, they're told that they have an appointment next week. By the time everything goes through medical travel, the appointment's done. It's gone, they have to cancel it. We need to address that problem, especially for seniors who need the care. Is anybody addressing that issue?
Yeah, so this is a complaint I've heard fairly often. I'm just writing myself a note to find out how often people miss appointments because their travel hasn't been booked in time. I don't know what that number is. I can tell you there are about 16,000 medical travel trips a year. And there are a lot of reasons that the appointments and the travel don't line up. Since the end of the pandemic, we've found that there's fewer seats on airplanes, fewer flights. And so it's harder to get bookings to move people from A to B for treatment. Another thing that happens that is beyond our control is that the appointment is rescheduled by the clinic or the specialist. And so then it ends up being a scramble because everything has to be changed. So there are things that medical travel could do better. There's absolutely no question about that. And the suggestion that was made earlier to link the integrated care teams to medical travel, I think is really a good idea, to make sure that there's that follow-up that goes from the health professional who has referred the person to a service outside of Fort Smith, and that they end up with they're proactively following that up. I take your point that lots of people don't do that for themselves, and then they end up potentially missing their appointment or scrambling at the last minute, which I understand is very stressful.
Councilor Brolio.
Yeah, when we talk about communication with the community and its people and how we get things out to them, I just want to bring up the issue that Fort Smith has a leadership meeting. I think it's once a month with the leaderships here. And they are involved with the Aboriginal people and stuff. I think that would be the best opportunity to get your information out to the Aboriginal people and people that don't fully understand the medical term of the technology and stuff of travel and things like that. I think that would be your best option, is to come to the leadership meeting and explain to the leadership on what they should be mentioning to their group of people on the medical terms.
I'll get Sujata to comment on that, but I'm hoping that you're aware of the Regional Wellness Council. It is a group of people from your community who meet 4 times a year to talk about what's happening at the health center, to reflect concerns and very rarely accolades about the health center service. And the chair then brings those concerns forward to the Leadership Council, of which Jerry is the chair. So the idea is that the feedback is collected by that Regional Wellness Council. I can't tell you right now everyone who's on it, but I do know Fort Smith, Métis, Salt River residents in general have suggested people to be nominated. They need 2 support letters. And so they're a very dedicated group. And as far as I know, Phyllis Maudsley is the chair. That's still the case. Yeah, Phyllis Maudsley is the chair of the Regional Wellness Council. And I think those are public meetings that people are welcome to attend. And Sujata attends too. You want to add anything, Sujata?
Yeah, and we have actually one of our Regional Wellness Council members in the audience. Lorraine.
It's just that I haven't heard about it, and I sit on the Métis Council.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to go back to your response where you said Glenda Simon brings the complaints forward to Sujata on a regular basis. I know your relationship is new and you haven't been doing this a long time. Is there any kind of a strategy that you have in how you relay the results of those complaints or the changes that you may incorporate into your operation because of that back to the community? Because I think that's a really important piece in how you build the relationship and ensure that you're, being proactive in how you're approaching things and that you're going to take those steps. And it's great that they're done, but if no one knows that they're done, it's, we're going to hear a lot of the same where they're not doing anything, there's no change, etc. So I just think that's a really key piece here.
Yes, I agree, and that's actually excellent advice. And I'm open to any venues that you're aware of, and this leadership meeting that you mentioned, Louise, is something I'll look into. But yes, whatever means you feel would be effective to getting the word out to people.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going through the questions that we had prepared here. Medical travel. When is the government going to address the discrepancy and inequality of the rates of non-government NWT and GNWT residents and provide for inflation? I am aware that if you're a non-government person on medical travel, I think you're allowed $36 a day in comparison to GNWT employee who's entitled to $140, I believe. Why such a discrepancy?
So the medical travel rates are set by the employer. The GNWT as an employer provides the rate that you just described, 140. I wasn't sure exactly how much it was. For people who are covered by NIHB and Med-T Health benefits, seniors health benefits, if they qualify by income for the boarding home, then they will have a place to stay and meals provided. Otherwise, they get that lower reimbursement. We would like to raise that rate, but it is not our rate. It's set by non-insured health benefits. They are the benchmark. And so we are currently negotiating with them to bring more money into this program because the program is losing money and it's not meeting people's expectations. So not only the GNWT, the RCMP have their health program, the CBC, the teachers, there is no single benchmark among all those organizations about who gets what. The GNWT, through it as the administrator for NIHB, is the payer of last resort. So if you don't have employer benefits or retiree benefits or something like that, then you end up with the discounted rate. It's not equitable, but this is not a problem that the GNWT can fix. What people offer for benefits for their employees is up to them.
Any other questions? Councilor Ferguson.
Thank you. So yeah, from the prepared questions, the Fort Smith Center received new blood testing diagnostic equipment in 2020. What blood diagnostic tests are being performed here through our local service providers, and whose do we have to get sent out? And I thought there was a question regarding, the folks that have to get lots of blood tests done, like folks with cancer or leukemia or things. Is there not? We have to send that out. Why can't we just do that here in house for those patients?
So I think the instrument that you're probably referring to is the XN 430 hematology analyzer. We got that sometime in probably mid 2021. It was probably a few months after I arrived, and it's just not just lab staff who operate that. Nurses can also operate it in the off hours, and with that we can do WBC, so white blood cell count, red blood cell count, hemoglobin, hematocrit, and platelets. And there are a number of other lab tests that we also do using what's called point of care instruments, like ISTAT tests, blood gases, just like basic chemistry. And we also do urinalysis using a point of care device. Everything else, so that would be things like liver enzymes, acetaminophen, salicylic acid, alcohol is sent to either Edmonton or Yellowknife. And the reason that we aren't able to do those things here is because they require a level of expertise that we have mostly been unable to attract to our health center.
Any other questions? I guess I have one because my teeth are starting to bother me. So why is dental not a part of health?
Yeah, the Canada Health Act doesn't include dental work as medically necessary. We can argue about whether that's right or wrong, but it is in legislation. So we don't get any Canada Health Transfer to provide dental services. It's strictly either privately or through NIHB.
Any other questions? I don't see any more, so I'd like to thank you for coming. And yes, you addressed a lot of things that we probably didn't know or something, but that things are changing always. Thanks.
Well, I guess what I want to say in closing is that we really are trying to make our services as effective as possible for people to use. And so I know these new initiatives like the point of care tests or the integrated care teams are new ideas. The point of them is to provide more responsive health care. The fact is that the health outcomes in the NWT are poor compared to the rest of the country, with higher rates of chronic disease, like diabetes, for example. And what I would like to see, and I'm sure Sujata and every other person working in this field, is better health outcomes for the money that we spend. We spend a ton of money, $620 million budgeted for this fiscal year. But you would never know it from, for example, our life expectancy. It's 5 years less than the rest of Canada. In Nunavut, 10 years less. So what we're trying to do is to figure out how to get better results from the money we're spending. So we're always interested to hear what you have to say about the service that you're getting and for us to consider how we can improve it. Thank you.
Thanks, and I hope you enjoy your stay in Fort Smith. And if you're going to Fitz, and great, thanks. Okay, next is approval of minutes.
I move that the minutes of the regular meeting of 0623 of June 20th, 2023 be adopted as presented.
I'll second it.
Questions? See none, all in favor? All in favor? Pass unanimously. Business arising from minutes. None there. Declaration of financial interest. See none. Council business.
I'll move that the Corporate Service Standing Committee minutes from July 4th, 2023 be adopted as presented.
I'll second.
Sorry. Okay. Questions? See none, all in favor? Pass unanimously.
I'll move that the NTPC Intervention Committee terms of reference be adopted as presented.
I'll second.
Questions? See none, all in favor? Pass unanimously.
I move that the town of Fort Smith write a letter to the GNWT Minister of Infrastructure regarding the resurfacing from airport along McDougal Road to Trout Street to Highway 5.
I'll second.
Questions? None? All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I'll move that the town of Fort Smith write a letter to the GNWT Department of Industry, Tourism, and Investment regarding paving the gravel portion of the road from TP Trail to Queen Elizabeth Park to the entrance loop of the campground.
I'll second.
Any questions? See none? All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I move that the administration obtain an estimate for the snowboard park hill upgrades to bring back to council with Slide Zone Shredder's contribution request for consideration.
I'll second that.
Question? See none? All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I move that council approves the gas tax funding contribution with MACA for the fiscal year 2023-2024 an amount of $1,014,000.
I'll second that.
Question? See none? All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I'll move that council approve the process for ranking capital projects and the completion of the following projects for 2023. Community plan and zoning bylaw review, town hall retrofit, sidewalk repair and improvements, hydrant replacement renewal, water sewer system upgrades, intake pump house replacement, main lift station midlife retrofit, lagoon liner replacement, landfill reclamation and expansion, landfill compactor building, the RC community rec center retrofit complete, community or recreation equipment replacement procurement, water truck fill station, fire training, burn can, bunker gear, evergreen procurement, communications equipment, evergreen procurement, emergency equipment, evergreen procurement, energy and engineering standards, arena upgrades, protective services, building replacement, IT upgrade plan, whooping crane, property remediation, energy upgrades, website renewal, asset management systems implementation, annual fire abatements, CRC pool backup generator, IT evergreen procurement, skid steer replacement program, fleet replacement procurement, town hall vehicle replacement procurement, completion of road paving, corporate services software complete.
I'll second.
Questions? Councillor Campbell.
Where's the cemetery fence? It was about 14th down before. I don't see it in here.
SAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are a list of projects that we were going to concentrate on for this year, and that the cemetery fence was not part of the list that was provided to council at the corporate services meeting.
Councillor Campbell.
Okay, going back to this list, I still have a problem with this CRC pool backup generator. I still think that's a number one priority because that's an emergency center, the CRC, Community Recreation Center. If anything goes wrong, a fire or anything, that's our main communication building. And we've been working at this for well over a year now, and we're still not out to tender or anything. I think that should be a priority, push forward, everything. Thank you.
SAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are still working on this. We are waiting for a response from the GNWT to see if they want to partner with us on being able to provide backup power to not only to our recreation center, but to PWK, because that's where the heating system is for the recreation center. They said that they would have a response to us by the end of July. If they decide not to participate in the backup generator project, we are ready to go ahead with the finalization of the documents and go into tender.
Any other questions? I guess I have one question. Do we have money for all this? Okay. No more questions. All in favor? All in favor, passed unanimously.
I move that council approves additional paving work with a total estimated cost of $374,004.10 and total estimated project cost of $626,659.10 for 2023.
I'll second.
Any questions? I do not have any more questions on this matter. All in favor? Passing unanimously.
Oh, Kevin
Nope.
didn't vote.
Kevin didn't vote. Okay, against? One against. Thanks.
I move that the utility count meter deposits continue to be held on accounts similar to security deposits, and that after the utility count, monthly payments have been made on time within a 30-day due date period for consecutive 12 months. The meter deposit will be transferred to the utility account as a credit to be applied towards future water bills, and that the credits on the utility accounts are not refunded until the utility account is closed.
I'll second.
Any questions?
They get to use the money that they, okay.
Okay, no questions. All in favor? All in favor, passed unanimously.
I move that the Protective Services Standing Committee minutes of July 4th, 2023 be adopted as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, any questions? See none. All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I move that the Community Services Standing Committee minutes of July 11th, 2023 be adopted as presented.
I'll second.
Questions? See none. All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I move that council approve a monetary donation of $2,500 and an in-kind contribution of the Bouncy Castle and stage setup and takedown for the Fireweek Festival on August 25th and 26th, 2023.
I'll second.
Questions? See none. All in favor? All in favor, passed unanimously.
I move that the Municipal Services Standing Committee minutes of July 11th, 2023 be adopted as presented.
I'll second.
Any questions? See no questions? All in favor? Passed unanimously.
Replacement of the amount of $595,000 to be expanded over 2 years.
I'll second.
Any questions? See none? All in favor? Passed unanimously.
I move that the town of Fort Smith waive landfill tipping fees for 4 end dump loads resulting from the demolition of 24 Tamarack Crescent.
I'll second that.
Any questions? See none? All in favor? All in favor, passed unanimously.
I'll move that the amended GV 102 Standing Committee on Corporate Services Policy be adopted as presented.
I'll second.
Any questions? See none? All in favor? Passed unanimously.
Sorry. I move that the amended GV 104 Standing Committee on Municipal Services policy be adopted as presented.
I'll second.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Passed unanimously.
I'll move that the amended GV 105 Standing Committee on Community Services Policy be adopted as presented.
I'll second.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Passed unanimously.
I move that amended GV 108 Standing Committee on Protective Service Policy be adopted as presented.
I'll second.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Passed unanimously.
I got a question separate. Can I add something to the agenda or is it all done with now? Concerning a letter on the highway that I forgot to bring up at the start again.
I think you had to put it in at the beginning.
Okay.
Oh, maybe the
SAO
SAO can provide a better.
You do have an opportunity under this next section to bring up any matters that you wish to. So if it's not something that needs to be addressed by council, but you can include in your comments, I think that would be the way to go. And then if it's something that needs to be addressed, you can, administration can address it at next month's cycle of meetings.
Thanks.
Mayor and Council Board Representative updates.
I'm not on any boards, so I don't have anything to re-update, but I would like to mention that the fire season this year has taken a couple of lives, unfortunately, one in BC, a Devon Gale, and we've heard of the Northwest Territories' Adam Yaden. And I'd just like to express condolences to these families. These are two people that gave their lives for a great cause. And well, it's just an unfortunate. This is an accident that happens maybe one person every 5 years, but to have two in the same year is kind of crushing. I would like to also like to thank the Department of Public Works, who have exercised a great deal of work in the cemetery, and I have to admit, it looks pretty darn good right now. So my hat's off to them. Thank you.
I too then want to send out my condolences to those folks that have lost their loved ones fighting fires here in the Northwest Territories. I just want to recognize the athletes that have traveled from the Northwest Territories to Halifax to participate in NAG. Good job, guys, for representing the Northwest Territories, and specifically shout out to those kids from Fort Smith. We're all so proud of you. I'd just like to welcome all the folks who traveled to Fort Smith for the events in Fort Fitzgerald for the Dene National Assembly and the 50th anniversary of the Paulette Caveat. We welcome you to our communities, and we look forward to this week of you here in our community, and enjoy having you all here. July has been pretty busy. Canada Day was awesome. We had Indigenous Days, which was really well attended, and we all worked together collaboratively on those things, and I thought that was amazing. And just a reminder, Frank Rubin's still missing, and they're looking for leads. If you know something, please come forward. There's a cash reward of $6,800. Thanks.
Thank you. My condolences to the firefighters also. And I'd like to big shout out to Smith Landing for a job well done this week for the Denny National Assembly. And my other one is Highway 5. They're going to be chip sealing this coming week and everything. But when they're chip sealing from Little Buffalo River on Highway 5 to town, they're not going to be chip sealing any of the park, what's in the Wood Buffalo National Park. I think it's going to be a dangerous condition going from new chip seal to the old one, and some of them are on corners and everything. I think we should be writing a letter to Parks Canada and GNWT finding out why they're not. I know they have a little pissing contest going on, but they got to get over that. Just going to make something bad going to happen. We got to make sure we get it before it all happens. And also, we're too late that I'd like to see something put forward for the cemetery fence to be installed, 4 foot high, black all around it. If we can put it on for the agenda next meeting, it would be much appreciated. Thank you.
I also would like to send my condolences out to the young firefighters that have lost their lives and that, and hopefully their family goes through a grievance and stuff. And also would like to say congratulations to all the athletes down south, and also to Smith Landing, and congratulations on their assembly. And also, the only other thing I have is there's still a few of us out there searching for Frank Rubin. Anybody that knows anything, like Councillor Ferguson said, please come forward and let us bring Frank home.
I would also like to pass my condolences on to the entire wildland firefighting community. I know the loss of 2 young people in a very short span of time has taken a tremendous toll on a very tired and overworked workforce across this country. And I think it's important that we sit back and recognize the level of commitment that these young folks put forward. And we had a very long chat at work this week regarding the tragedy that happened in Fort Liard earlier in the week, and the tragedy that happened in BC a little over a week ago. And I want to thank all of the folks in this industry that are out there putting their lives on the line every day to keep our community safe. So I have a big kudos for you all. And I also wanted to welcome all of the members that are here and the folks that have come to participate in the Denny National Assembly this week, and to recognize the Paulette Caveat. And I had the opportunity to see a few YouTube videos of some of our great young athletes competing at NAG over the last couple of days. So great job, everyone, and we're all very proud of you. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd also like to send my condolences to the firefighters here and throughout the world. It's amazing when you watch the news that see a good portion of our world on fire. And I give you kudos to the ones that are making it safe for the rest of us. And I'd also like to welcome Smith Landing on their activities going on with the Denny Nation meetings there. And I'd also like to send out congratulations to all our young competitors that went out to the Aboriginal Games. And win or lose, come home safely, and you're always a star in our eyes. So it's not always about winning. It's about enjoying yourself and representing us. And I thank you for that. And it's good to see that we're moving ahead again in works, another busy year for us. And we're getting things done. So thanks. Okay. Administration.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to take this opportunity to update council on a few other of the capital projects that are moving forward. I already gave an update regarding the CRC backup generator. A couple other ones I'd like to highlight is community plan and zoning bylaw review is currently out. The request for proposals is currently out to competition. Closes on July 28th. The intake replacement and the main lift station retrofit, both those tender documents should be out this week. And this is construction that will happen in 2024, but those documents will be out and out to competition this week. The sewage lagoon liner, those tender documents are nearly complete. We did the final review of them yesterday, so they should be done out to competition either later this week or the first part of next week. The website renewal, there is a beta version of the site going to be available later this week, and perhaps at the Corporate Services Committee meeting in August, we'll ask the people who are involved in that to do a demonstration for council. And if you're interested in looking at the site, contact the executive assistant and he can give you information on how to log into the beta site in order to see how it's going to look and function and that type of thing. And the last capital project that I'd like to touch on is the paving. All the paving that council had approved is complete with the exception of Conover Park. When they reviewed the site, they had to do some surveying there on drainage, and there were some trees to be removed, but the pavers should be back sometime in August, and the Conover Park will be paved at that time. So that's the update on the capital projects. The SAO staffing process is moving forward. There are interviews scheduled for Thursday, and the new bylaw for the SAO, I just received it this afternoon, so I'll be doing a review of it and a discussion with legal counsel on some changes to that before we bring that forward to council. The other thing that I'd like to touch on is the wildfire situation. Myself, the Director of Protective Services, and the Director of Corporate Services have been meeting regularly with ECC, Wood Buffalo National Park in Alberta. And in our last meeting held on Monday, yesterday, there was no immediate threat to the community. The 3 fires closest to the community pose no threat and haven't seen any significant growth towards the community. And that they are keeping us abreast of any changes to that situation. And if anything important happens, why they will be in contact with us. And we have another meeting scheduled for Thursday to look at the progress that's been made on those fires or how they are in relation to the community. So we are constantly in contact with those 3 groups, and when there's something to report, why we will ensure that the public gets the information. The other thing is that you may have noticed that in your mailbox there was a mail drop done that went to every mailbox with information, valuable information on what we've done as far as the emergency plan, our communication strategy, and if you're not hearing from us, that's probably a good thing because there's no threat and there's nothing to be concerned about. But the most important thing that the public can do is be prepared. And as part of that mail drop was an emergency kits portion on the back. We encourage the public to look at that. If you have any questions, the staff at the Recreation Center, our Community and Recreation Center, have additional information, and there's more flyers and that type of thing there. So if anybody has any questions, they can certainly go there and receive more information. So that's all I have for this evening. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, if you wish, I can introduce the briefing note for the letter that was received from the Fort Smith Media Council?
Yes, good.
Thank you. So we received a letter, an email from the Fort Smith Media Council. What they are requesting is a letter of support from the town to take to their main table with the parties of the Government of Canada and the Government of the Northwest Territories to support the early land transfer of residential properties. The transfer would form part of their current land claim that's being negotiated between the Government of Canada, the GNWT, and the Northwest Territories Media Nation. They've indicated that part of the future settlement would be the transfer of lands in fee simple, both urban and rural, and that the federal and territorial governments, from the federal and territorial governments to the NWT Media Nation, and ultimately to the community Media Nations of Fort Smith, Fort Resolution, and Hay River. The Fort Smith Media Council is seeking early transfer for the purposes of addressing the growing housing crisis in Fort Smith. They recognize that the growth and prosperity of Fort Smith is currently being hampered by the lack of affordable lots for homeowners to build on and to develop medium-density residential complexes.
Thanks, Councillor Campbell.
No question, but I think we can make a recommendation that we proceed with support letter for the Fort Smith Media Council for the early transfer of residential lands.
I'll second that.
Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Bolio just informed me that she's in a conflict because she sits on the Métis board, so perhaps she should leave for the discussion. So I have a couple questions. So is this a time-sensitive item that can't come to committee before it comes to this directly to council? I don't know the background on it, so that's my question.
SAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The email was received on July 12th, and the indication was that they would like to be able to take it to the current round of negotiations that they have. But certainly if council doesn't feel comfortable or would like more information on the transfer, that can be requested from the Northwest Territory Media Nation prior to making any commitment to a letter of support.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. No, I'm fully supportive of this. I think it's important to support our indigenous governments within the community. And I know the Métis have identified this land that they're planning to do in the withdrawal within the boundary a number of years ago. So I'm supportive. I was just thought if it wasn't time sensitive that we could possibly bring it back when all of council is here, but I'm not opposed to recommending moving forward at this time.
Any questions? Aye. No questions? All in favor? All in favor, passed unanimously. Thanks. Absence of councillors.
I move that Councillor Kroll be excused from the Corporate Services Protective Services Standing Committee on July 4th, 2023.
I'll second.
Question, all in favor? Passed unanimously.
I move that Councillor Bolio be excused from Community Service and Municipal Services Standing Committee on July 11th, 2023.
I'll second.
Question, all in favor? Passed unanimously.
I'll move that Councillor Prevet, Councillor Kissinger, and Councillor Kroll be excused from the regular meeting of 0723 on July 18th, 2023.
I'll second it.
Questions? See none, all in favor? That's unanimous. Date of next council meeting.
The next special meeting of council is SP 0823 of July 19th, 2023 at noon. Corporate Services and Protective Services Standing Committee meeting is August 1st, 2023. Community Services and Municipal Services Standing Committee meetings August 8th, 2023. Regular meeting of council 032-23 is August 15th, 2023.
Okay. Okay.
I move that we go in camera under CTV Act S.23 bracket 3 bracket C bracket personnel issue.
I'll second that.
Question, all in favor? Yeah, all in favor, pass unanimously.